Hi, I'm Owlbear Rogue. Welcome to the cave. It's been a party in here lately. We are just today hitting 300 subscribbles. Pew, 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 pew. I feel wildly, incredibly lucky. You have been such a positive, creative community so far. I love hearing about the ideas that speak to you and the ways you're planning on taking them and making them your own. It feels like a genuine bit of magic that you found your way here, and I'm deeply grateful for you. You all voted and decided you'd like to take your thanks in the form of me introducing one of my homebrew campaign settings, and I am just so happy to oblige. If you want the chance to weigh in on the kind of videos I make and where I set things, etc., make sure that you're subscribed and hit that notification tab so that you'll know when I post a poll. There are two main homebrew worlds I usually run at my table. The one I'm going to introduce you to right now is the closest to my heart. I was having trouble mapping out this video, and I realized that part of the problem was that doing this feels like wrapping up a little bouncing baby of mine and handing it off to the internet. But my friends and I have been playing in this world for years now. I'm about to wrap up a 5-year run of a campaign in this setting. The people who play in that campaign were just acquaintances when we started the story, and now they're the very best of real life friends. I know that even though this feels like a little baby setting, it's actually a strong, independent campaign setting that doesn't need its Owlbear mama anymore. Its name is Fellvrold. And Fellvrold is a cold, strange, and savage place heavily influenced by Scandinavian folklore. You can obviously run a long campaign there to heal a curse that's been afflicting the land for hundreds of years. Or you can run shorter or sandbox campaigns. It would be more of a snowbox in this case. You can run one-shots here, and in fact, later this week, I'm going to give you a one-shot that I love to run in this world, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Here's the introduction to Fellvrold that I give new players when they're ready to start. Even before the winter curse fell, the northern continent of Fellvrold was known as a wild, unforgiving land, home to those with something to prove or something to hide from. Then, over 300 years ago, an endless winter took hold of Fellvrold, so that only the most long-lived races can remember the lush mountain ranges, the tangled forests, the endless fields of firethorn flowers, and the black sand beaches as they once were. Though there are many stories and theories, no one knows how the crippling winter came to be or why. No ships that have sailed too far from Fellvrold have returned. All attempts at teleportation or magical communication with the outside world have failed. Forced by hunger to abandon the interior of the continent to strange beasts and the dead, the surviving population clings to the coastline. Life hinges on fishing and what plants can be grown in magically warmed caves built into cliffs above the sea. Such magic is a matter of survival. The peoples of Fellvrold have come to think of magical abilities in terms of small and big magics. Big magics are high-level spells that significantly alter and impact the world. While almost everyone in Fellvrold has some magical ability, those with skill in the big magics are rare and highly valued. Powerful magic wielders are necessary to protect towns, break up sea ice, grow food, conduct research on the nature of this curse, and generally keep civilization functioning. It's considered a duty to use your powers to help society if you possess them. Fellvrold was always a place where people walked the fine frontier line of looking out for each other while steadfastly minding their own business. After an initial period of conflict, the desperate trials of this winter curse have heightened the need to look out for each other, making uneasy allies out of fierce tribes, rugged adventurers, the scholar, and the outcast. When greeting or parting ways, the peoples of the coast, regardless of species or creed, will often say, "The winter is on our heads," and then the reply will come, "Spring is ever in our hearts." Once I give my players that introduction, we start character creation. What kinds of creatures run around Fellvrold? Well, we've got a pretty big variety. There are some species that are very common in Fellvrold. There are some that exist, but players are going to need to bring me a particularly good snack as a DM and a very well thought out backstory to justify it. And then there are a few little ones that are off limits, but we'll get to that. But first, the common species. Dwarves and their equally long-lived cousins, the gnomes, are the most common races by far in Fellvrold. Most dwarves worship Thorod, the god of fire and change. They're natural leaders and helm efforts to discover the cause of the winter curse and break it. They tend to pursue lives as priests, fine craftsmen, warriors, scholars, or healers, but outside of Horadal, which is the main city on the coast with the main temple of Thorod, many have chosen other paths. For them, I use the dwarven stats and subraces in the PHB minus the Dwergar. There's a saying in Fellvrold, there are as many kinds of gnomes as there are hairs in an orc's ear. Despite their many differences, the gnome cultures all share a clever mind, uncanny stealth, and an innate talent for the small magics. Like their dwarven cousins, most worship the god Thorod, but focus on a different manifestation of him. They call him Aki Brahm and admire the unpredictability and creative power of his sacred flame. For all the different kinds of gnomes, I use PHB gnome stats. The two kinds that are in the PHB are fair game, and I've added a few special ones. There are certain abilities that I've given them to flavor these different kinds of gnomes. We can get more into the nitty-gritty of that at some point in the future if you're interested. For now, I'm just going to give you the flavor. Eagle gnomes, stocky and cold-loving, with blue eyes and skin, wild white hair, and a laugh like the crackle of ice underfoot. The eagle gnomes thrive as guides for those bold enough to travel inland. When an eagle female is heavily pregnant, she walks out onto a frozen lake or river and stomps her foot. The sound the ice makes beneath her is the baby's name. They're quite cozy, living in houses made of snow and ice, and often build communities along inland trails where they can help protect travelers and nearby outposts. For a price. Eagle gnomes know their worth and never do anything for free. The Fisk gnomes are tall by gnome standards and spindly. With light gray skin and eyes, pointed ears, they are the stealthiest of the gnomes. They've formed an almost symbiotic relationship with the orcs, who don't mind their unsettling quiet or dark humor, and value them for their utility as sneakers and watchers. Likewise, the Fisk appreciate the orcs' uncomplicated nature and strength. The Firth gnomes are jovial. They like to let their long hair hang loose. They have dark, earthy skin and green eyes. They're less adventurous than some other gnomes. They tend to be homebodies, loving comfort, drink, and song. They're skilled animal handlers. Almost all ale and spirits consumed on Fellvrold are produced by the Firth. Humans. Humans that are native to Fellvrold come from groups that are attuned to different types of animals. Bear, boar, wolf, elk, snowcat, raven. They all have ancestral connections to different animals that might appear to them during dreams or times of trial. Those who devote themselves to regularly communing with those ancestral spirits, aka those who roleplay and tell their DM they're taking the time to do that, are more likely to receive guidance when in need. These humans tend to be excellent survivalists, deeply attuned to nature. Of course, there are also some humans descended from people who came to Fellvrold to trade or to start a new life. Before the curse, Fellvrold was known the world over as the farthest place a person could run from their problems. They've become trapped here for better or worse, along with everyone else. Now, many generations removed from their original cultures, they're as much Fellvrolian as anyone else. Though they don't have those ancestral spirits to guide them, they often manifest a strong talent for the big magics, necessary to keep the peoples of the coast balanced on that razor's edge of survival. They may still worship whatever gods their ancestors brought with them from their lands. Many of the magically gifted choose to study at the School of Magics in another coastal city called Eridor. This is the second most powerful organization in Fellvrold after the Temple of Thorod. For them, I use basic human stats, and I give, again, just little things to flavor like those ancestral spirits. We can get more into the nitty-gritty in the future. Orcs and half-orcs. Fearless and tougher than squid jerky, orcs are no-nonsense survivors. They can be a bit rough around the edges, but they're very much a part of the civilized peoples of the coast. Much of the labor of the food caves falls to them, and they're one of the only species bold enough to maintain some inland mining settlements. These outposts allow for a small amount of overland trade and protect the coastal cities from incursions by trolls, fey creatures, and the undead lurking in the north. Orcs and half-orcs are also right at home on the small fishing and trade ships that sail closely along the coastline, and of course they often keep the company of those Visk gnomes. For them, I just use the orc stats from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount or half-orc from the PHB. Firbolg. Shaggy and yak-like in appearance, the Firbolg are peaceful giants. They were driven from remote mountain temples by the winter's curse, and they've remained a bit culturally insular. They're reluctant to blend too much into society. They're wise and contemplative, and you'll find them in small groups in coastal cities, sometimes offering their services as spiritual advisors or fortune tellers. I just grabbed that Firbolg stat block from Volo's Guide. Probably the fan favorite species to play in this world is the woolly loxodon. Walking into any tavern in Fellvrold, you're certain to hear the loud trumpeting laugh of a woolly loxodon. These jovial giants thrive on a good drink and a bad joke. Loyal to friends and loved ones to a fault, they are just as well suited for nurturing plants in the food caves as they are for goring trolls outside an outpost. Loxodons can be slow to anger, but when enraged, their fury is terrible. I don't believe there are any official woolly loxodon stats, so again, I just take the regular loxodon stats and add some cold resistance, some aesthetic things like the long fur. The less common species are Dragonborn, Changeling, Goliath, Kinku, Shifter, Triton, and half-elf. You might have noticed half-elf and elf are missing from the list of common species. Elves do exist in Fellvrold, but they are not available as a player species option. They're wildly fey, dangerous, godlike in their powers, and in some ways divorced from the happenings of the regular world. A half-elf existing would not be impossible, but it would be extraordinary. The only thing other than elf that's really just off the table when I run this world is warlock with a fiendish patron. Basically, this world's got a lot of problems, but demons aren't one of them. There's a brief introduction to the overall picture of Fellvrold as a world and the types of species that are running around it, different ways your players could jump in and start engaging. This week, I'm going to be releasing a video with a one-shot that I like to run in this world. And then later on next week, I'll start introducing you to the main campaign, the big plot that I run for many years with many different groups of friends here in Fellvrold. I cannot thank you enough for joining me on this journey, for coming to the cave, for hanging out, for all of your incredible comments. You've really touched me, and I hope just if any of you take anything that I've said and bring it to your tables and have a laugh, have a connection with your friends, that is all I dream of. And you're making me feel like for some people those dreams are coming true. It means so much. So stay tuned. Subscribble if you haven't already. Again, 300 today. Amazing. You can check in to have the chance to vote for where I'm setting new one-shots or what kinds of videos I'm going to make. And stay tuned for that one-shot set here in Fellvrold and more in the future about my other homebrew settings. And again, the main campaign that I run here in Fellvrold. Thank you, as always, for exploring the feminine urge to play Dungeons & Dragons with me, Owlbear Rogue.